Welcome to the Sowing Seed Podcast, one guy's thoughts on family, faith, farming, and financial freedom. Now from the Farms Podcast Studio, here's your host, Matt Miller.
So I was thinking a little bit over my years now of gardening here at EIEIO, and I wanted to make a suggestion of 4 crops that anybody, no matter what your level of experience, could successfully grow this coming growing season. 4 crops that, quite honestly, are really, really difficult to mess up, and because of that, can help you and your family grow in confidence and start to reap the rewards and benefits of growing some of your own food during the spring and summer months. So those 4 crops I wanted to touch on just briefly today are onions, spinach, basil, and tomatoes. Now, our very first gardening experience in the Houston area was basil. I got a wild hair. I read some article somewhere about pesto, and I was determined that we were going to grow basil and produce pesto. So I went out and I bought 1 or 2 small basil plants at the local garden store. I put them in a window box that I had purchased at Lowe's in town with potting soil, and we started to grow those plants. Well, I learned really, really quickly that 2 basil plants was not going to get us anywhere with respect to making that pesto that we all had been talking about in the family and we were all looking forward to getting a chance to try. But I did some research on YouTube. I found out that basil was very, very easy to create additional plants from existing ones with just clippings, putting those clippings in water for a series of a couple of weeks, letting them grow roots, and then being able to transplant those cuttings into additional soil, etc. So in that first year, I started out with those couple of plants, and by the end of the summer, I think I had 20 or 30 basil plants. We were finally able to harvest enough basil to make that very first pesto that the family still raves about today. And it was so fun to get the kids involved during that entire process. So basil would be one that I would definitely start out. Now, it is a warm weather plant, so you have to wait on planting the basil or start it inside until after your last average frost date to make sure that the plants don't get killed off if frost does occur outdoors wherever you are. A couple of cold weather plants which are very, very forgiving as well are onions and spinach. In fact, I don't think I've ever had a failure of either of those. And in my opinion, you can never plant enough onions, because with the onions, not only can you utilize them all year round, but we've also found that they're really easy to store. And if we have an overabundance, to even chop and freeze in the freezer for use throughout the year. Spinach is a cold winter crop that has a very limited time where you've got the ability to grow it and harvest it. It bolts very quickly or goes to seed very quickly once it starts to get hot out in your area. But you do have a window of 6-8 weeks, depending on your climate at least, to grow and harvest spinach. And then finally, tomatoes. Now, tomatoes can be a two-edged sword. They're probably the most difficult of the 4. And my philosophy is, for what it's worth, I always plant a bunch of tomato plants, realizing that some of them are going to get eaten up by bugs. Some of them are not going to grow very well. But because I plant a bunch of different plants and a bunch of different varieties, I will get a harvest each and every year. And we literally harvest bushels and bushels of tomatoes throughout the growing season. Once again, tomatoes are a warm weather crop, so you need to make sure that you're not putting them outside until your last average frost date, and you just need to be aware and keep an eye on them those earliest days. I've tried beating the frost date before, but most cases they've been killed because we've gotten a frost. So I've gotten to the point where I'm not that guy that wants to have the very first tomato to show all my friends. I have a little bit more laid back approach because I want to make sure that the work that I do yields the results without a bunch of loss in the early days when the weather can still be really flaky. So anyway, onions, spinach, basil, and tomatoes, those 4 fail-safe crops that I highly recommend if you're just thinking about growing or planting for the very first time, that you and your family utilize in taking baby steps to begin to learn the growing process and to begin to provide food for you and your family throughout the spring and summer months. Hope this helps, guys, and God bless you.
Thanks for listening. Check out our website, sowingseed.net, the Sowing Seed channel on YouTube, and if you got something out of today's podcast, give us a 5-star review on your podcast player of choice. Until next time, go plant the seed you need to succeed.